15 years ago, Toronto's Community Foundation conducted its first survey of key quality of life indicators across Ontario's capital city. Today, community foundations around the province do similar annual checks to find out what's working and what isn't in their regions. Joining us now for what they found this year and what role philanthropy has to play in building their communities, we welcome in Sudbury, Ontario, Brian Koivu. He is Executive Director of the Sudbury Community Foundation. And here in our studio, Sharon Avery, President and CEO of the Toronto Foundation, Lisa Collodi, Executive Director of the Windsor-Essex Community Foundation, and John Good, Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough. Brian, nice to have you up there in the Nickel City, and to the three of you, appreciate you coming into our set here in Toronto. Let's start with a little setup pack just to sort of set the table for the discussion to come, shall we? Sheldon, please. Vital Signs is a program coordinated by Community Foundations of Canada, a national network for 191 community foundations. First started in 2001 by the Toronto Foundation, Vital Signs reports are published every year in communities across Canada and around the world, including 10 from Ontario. Collectively, these foundations hold $4.8 billion in combined assets. Vital Signs reports are a snapshot of a city, identifying the trends and issues affecting the quality of life of residents. They include things such as housing, arts and culture, employment, health and wellness, safety, environment, transit, and civic engagement. Basically, how things are going and what we can improve. The reports are used as an educational resource by a variety of stakeholders, including businesses, community organizations, and post-secondary institutions. The Vital Signs report is intended to start conversations with leaders and help inform decision-making on priorities such as poverty, health, transit, and youth unemployment. Last year, former Toronto Foundation President and CEO Rahul Bardwaj was on our program to discuss the need for greater collaboration and civic engagement.
The point that we're trying to make is that we need to start working together more collaboratively and think of our city as one unified city to be the driving measure of this region. There aren't any successful city regions around the world that don't have a very strong, successful city at its core. And the issues that we're looking at, affordable housing, transit, youth unemployment, all those require a concerted and collaborated effort. So we don't get to go hide in our communities anymore.
Let's start with his successor, shall we? You've been on the job how long?
About 30 days.
Okay, let's throw you to the wolves right away. The Vital Signs report, when you are meeting with potential donors who you would like to give sizable amounts of money to help do projects here in the capital city, that Vital Signs report, how vital is it to your efforts?
Well, I think all my colleagues would say it's the starting point of a really important discussion about the community. You know, it is the most comprehensive capture of all the data available in the city. It's not original research, it's a collection of research. And so to actually be able to look at the issues and do a cross-cutting view, you can actually bring pieces together for donors. For me, I think my big push is on donors talking about issues as opposed to institutions. And the fact that issues are more complex and they need to be looked at from a variety of viewpoints.
Let's get more specific to each particular locale. And Brian, I'm going to go up to Sudbury for you. Aboriginal issues, Indigenous issues was an important theme in your Vital Signs report this year. How come?
Every year, the Sudbury Community Foundation's Vital Signs report identifies a special focus area. We had identified the Aboriginal matter in 2008, and we felt that it was important to get back to exploring some of the issues that we had considered at that time to see where things had gotten better or maybe even gotten worse. And so it was basically a continuation of work we began in 2008.
Give us a for instance. What got better? What got worse?
I think in a number of areas we were encouraged to see that our numbers reflected positively in terms of comparatives to the rest of the province and even across the country, although there are still considerable gaps in areas like employment or unemployment, depending on how you want to look at it, at post-secondary attainment, at unemployment numbers, at healthcare, access to primary healthcare, and primary healthcare providers. So what we basically found that while there had been some really positive trends in terms of community well-being, amongst the Aboriginal community, we are still behind a little bit in terms of of comparatives to the non-Aboriginal population.
Okay, let's go to southwestern Ontario. One of the things you look at is civic engagement. How well would you rate the amount of civic engagement there is in Windsor-Essex these days?
Well, you know, I think Windsor-Essex is an engaged community. So what we've seen over the few years we've been doing vital signs is that people feel like they belong, that we're welcoming to newcomers, that they feel we're opening the door for new people to come to our community. But there are still gaps, as Brian was saying in Sudbury, where there still is a sense to look at racism issues, increase voter turnout. But overall, people are happy and feel a sense of belonging in their community.
John, that's a good place to pick up for Peterborough. How about welcoming newcomers? How well does Peterborough do that?
I would say on the whole, very well. But last November, the community might have been asking itself what was going on here when we had the only mosque in our community firebombed. And certainly for the Muslim community, they felt very threatened and vulnerable. But it turned into a defining moment for our community because various faith congregations reached out, offered places to worship. One of the first was the Beth Israel Synagogue, so the Muslim community worshiped in the synagogue in Peterborough. Then they worshiped in the fire hall, the firefighters that came to their rescue. And a crowdfunding site that developed from a professor at Trent University, $110,000 in 36 hours.
To fix the mosque?
To fix the mosque. But then I got a phone call from Kenzu Abdullah, the president of the Mosque Association, because they had a problem. They didn't need the money, they were insured. And he said, we want now to make a gift to the community in the spirit that the community reached out to us. Could we work with you? And out of that came the Kawartha Muslim Religious Association Fund for Women and Children, and gifts that were made and will be made each year to the Five Counties Children's Center and the Crossroads Shelter for Women, YWCA
So
Crossroads.
firebombing a mosque ends up having a happy ending.
Basically, community engagement came from it. It became much more than an issue for the Muslim population in Peterborough. It was a defining issue for our community, and a sense that everyone's more engaged. Kenzu says now the schools are calling. They'd like to bring classes to the mosque to learn more about Islam. So,
Okay. Sharon, Toronto loves to think of itself as a world-class city. Does the Vital Signs report confirm or deny that?
Well, we actually had a lot more data on the global positioning of Toronto this year than ever before. And I would say definitely all of the global standards would show us to be world class. We're the fifth most livable city in the world. But I would sort of suggest that the importance of vital signs is that we don't just look at big global averages, because Toronto is a great global city, and I don't think we have to argue that any longer. But I do believe that when you dig into the numbers, you can see smaller pockets within the city are still struggling.
We're not world class, obviously, in terms of we don't have ancient antiquities here like Rome does or that kind of thing. What would you point to say Toronto's world class and here's the evidence?
Well, I would say the number one stat that proves that is our post-secondary graduation numbers, which are at 60%. And when you have that, you have your ownership of the knowledge economy. And so that really does drive us.
That takes us to Northern Ontario. Brian, I want to ask you, because I hear this all the time, unfortunately, one of Northern Ontario's best exports is its people. And I want to know if you've got anything in your vital signs report that could potentially stem the tide of young people leaving Northern Ontario to go where they perceive there is more opportunity.
I think, Steve, one of the challenges we're facing at the moment is the price of base metals, and that's been a situation that's prevailed for a few years now. So it puts strains on the economy and in terms of jobs and in terms of retaining not only retaining the young people that are from Sudbury, but the young people who arrive to Sudbury. In conversations with the leaders of our post-secondary institutions, it's quite clear that we, all three of the schools, including Laurentian here, are extremely good at attracting students from outside of Sudbury and even from outside of the country. The challenge becomes keeping them here, and many of them want to stay here. They enjoy the quality of life that is possible here in Sudbury, but of course, in order to carry on with lives and raising families and building lives, you have to have a job. And some of this, I think, might well be cyclical, but some of this perhaps is a little more systemic and something that we as a community have to engage in quite quite profoundly.
So just so I understand, there's no problem in Sudbury that wouldn't be a whole heck of a lot better with a doubling of the price of base metals. Is that right?
Pretty much. Unfortunately, that's been the way of life in Sudbury for a long, long time. The number of individuals who work in the mining industry directly is not what it was a few decades ago, but there is still a very high level of participation employment-wise in terms of the mining service industry. Fortunately, a lot of those companies service mines all over the world, so that's been a bit of a buffer, but it also has a slowing down effect in terms of construction and building starts, and all of those things are contributors to jobs.
Lisa, let's pick up on that. Employment in southwestern Ontario. What do the vital signs say about that?
Well, we have a similar situation where we have had to look at economic diversification. Windsor-Essex has traditionally been an auto area, and when we had the downturn, we had to look at bringing in other industry for our young people as well as everyone else in our community. So when you look at the vital signs, work and employment was rated poorly, but if you look at the stats, our unemployment rate is going down. So we're looking at finding a mix between who we graduate and the skills they have and the jobs that are available. And that's one of our struggles now.
Any idea what the unemployment rate in Windsor is today?
It's around 6%.
Well, that's not far off the provincial rate.
It's not too bad when we were leading in unemployment. So, but what happened is a lot of people left, and a lot of people went out west, and now with the struggles out west, they're coming back. But they want meaningful employment and a good wage.
Gotcha. John, Peterborough, employment rate, how's it looking?
Well, it's one of the stories we tell ourselves over and over, that we've got a high unemployment rate in Peterborough, and yet that's one of the stats in vital signs that people are having to take a second look at, because the first 6 months of 2016, our unemployment rate was 4.7%, so much better than the provincial and national averages.
And prospects look what?
Prospects look good. We have more business startups year over year. And back to newcomers as well, we have the highest percentage of newcomer entrepreneurs in Peterborough of any of the 35 census metropolitan areas across Canada. And it's been shown that communities with high rates of immigrant entrepreneurship have very strong economies.
Sharon, let me ask you about millennials. We know millennials in Ontario's capital city are never going to be able to afford to buy a home. We know that already. Average price of a home, what is it now, $1.4 million, something like that?
Something crazy like that.
Yeah. How about the labor market for millennials? How does that look?
Well, it hasn't looked good for a number of years. In fact, it's been almost a decade of increase. But in this year's vital signs, we actually saw quite a significant drop, 5% drop between 2014 and 2015. We're not certain what is behind that. We know that globally, Toronto was rated the best urban environment for youth worldwide. And so we're going to keep an eye out on that, because it's a good news story and we want it to stay a good news story.
Let me ask everybody about something that thankfully is out of the shadows and we're talking a lot more about these days, and that is mental health services. Brian, let me go to you first. If you're suffering from mental health in Northern Ontario, particular in Sudbury, what are your chances today versus, say, 10 years ago of getting the kind of help you need?
I think they're a great deal better, although to counteract that, we're also seeing statistics we have from 2014, and these are basically self-rated or a situation where individuals are self-rating their mental health, and we're certainly seeing some declines. The percentage rate had been over 70% in 2013, and it's below 70% as of last year. I think we're also seeing sort of ancillary situations with respect to alcohol and drug use, particularly amongst young people. And so while the capacity is certainly improving and increasing, I think the demands are as well. And even a simple statistic like those who are reporting being under some level of stress seem to be trending upwards as well. So it's a bit of a situation where, yes, we are pleased with what's been happening in terms of the capacity, both in terms of infrastructure type supports as well as personal supports, but the demand is going up also.
Lisa, how about in southwestern Ontario? If you have mental health issues, the demands versus what programs are able to achieve?
This is an area we still need to work on. We are still underserved for doctors as well as mental health services. So if you look at the averages for physicians in Ontario, Windsor, and nationally, we're at half or less. So it's really hard to find a good doctor, to keep a good doctor. My doctor is asking patients to leave because he's got too many patients. So it's similar with the mental health issues.
How does he, wait a sec, your doctor's asking patients
to leave,
get off his roster?
Get off his roster because he can't handle the workload.
Huh. Where are they supposed to go?
Exactly. So we're not going anywhere. And it's the same for mental health, especially for children, because there are issues with our young people around stress and abuse, and it's really hard to access the services you need.
John in Peterborough?
Our experience is very similar to Brian's in Sudbury. We had 10 years ago, we were well above the provincial average of people who reported very good or excellent mental health, and now we've flipped. We're below the provincial average, drop of about 7% in 10 years. And it's so important because mental health is one of those sort of key cross-cutting things when you talk homelessness, when you talk employment status, when you talk education. So often it's mental health related. If it's not mental health, it's probably income. Those are probably two really core pieces.
Sharon, can you draw a direct line between the physical and or mental health of the population and how good your city is in terms of the boxes it checks off on the vital signs report?
Absolutely, John is right. It's a cross point. It's a flashpoint for a whole lot of other issues the city might be facing. So for us, transit woes, which aren't a new story in Toronto. The fact is, in Toronto, it's 1 in 4, I think, is our statistic on people who express high levels of stress on a regular basis. It connects back to affordable housing. It connects back to the child poverty rates. Our food bank use this year went up 48% in the inner suburbs.
Over last year?
Over last year.
In 1 year?
Well, oh no, sorry, over a 5-year period. But the fact is that is enormously telling, and you can see how stress levels are connected to that directly.
Just for people watching us outside Toronto, the inner suburbs are like the Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough.
Correct.
Not York region, but the...
And that's the other shift we're seeing. Poverty is going from the downtown core out into these inner suburbs. You're also seeing a shift with senior citizens accessing food banks, and so their stress levels are connected to all of these pieces.
What does that tell you about how things are working here if you're seeing those kinds of increased food bank usage?
Well, I think that what it says is we can look at broad averages and feel good about the city. There's some really wonderful things to celebrate in Toronto, but there are a large group of people being left behind. And if we don't actually dig deeper into the numbers and ask ourselves, why is it that our poverty rate in this city for children has not changed in 20 years, we have some work to do.
Let's talk housing. I would assume it's way more affordable to live in Windsor than it is in Toronto, right?
Absolutely.
You can buy a house there for what's the average price?
Oh, probably about 150 or 170.
No kidding.
Yes.
So housing is not an issue in Windsor in the way it is here, not at all.
We've had a good couple of years in that the prices have taken off a little bit, but compared to other communities across Ontario and Canada, it's very affordable to live in Windsor. Our issue is around specialized housing, housing for people with specialized needs, for seniors, assisted housing. And that's something that came out of our vital signs, looking for specific housing for people who have some extra needs or mental health or other issues.
Brian, what role in Sudbury does philanthropy play in trying to increase the affordable housing stock in the city?
There has been some, and I have had some personal involvement with some philanthropy related to affordable housing. Although I think, like many communities, we would probably find that more philanthropy is focused perhaps in the healthcare sector or in the educational sector. What we're seeing in Sudbury, though, is our proportion of individuals who are over 65 is a little bit higher than across the country or across the province. And conversely, our youth population maybe is a little less, but we spoke to that earlier. But we certainly expect that trend to continue for at least another 12 to 15 years. So the capacity for not only housing, but for care services within that housing is going to increase. Our vacancy levels in terms of housing for seniors, or at least affordable housing for seniors, is quite low. So we certainly do need to do some work on capacity, and philanthropy definitely has to be part of it. Government does play its role and tries to, and certainly the private sector does also. But in terms of ensuring the affordability side, I think philanthropy has to play a little bit of a bigger role than it has in the past.
John, how about in Peterborough, the role of philanthropy in affordable housing?
Well, a remarkable story to tell you, Steve. Just this month and next, 42 families are moving into new apartments in what was formerly the Mother House of the Sisters of St. Joseph, a historic property in Peterborough. The Peterborough Poverty Reduction Network looked at the stubborn 1,500 households that have been on the list waiting for housing in Peterborough now for 10 years. And that yardstick is not moving.
Those 42 families, they're
these
local?
These are local families now who are moving into a range of apartments, everything from rent assistance to full market rates. But it was a project that was the property purchased by the Poverty Reduction Network, now a charity called the Mount Community Centre. The first phase of all that construction and renovation wasn't eligible for commercial financing. So a very creative social finance program put together, a community bond issue, $2 million. The Community Foundation was the second largest bondholder in that. Now with tenants moving in, they've been able to secure commercial finance, and the community can look at other opportunities.
Gotcha. Just so I'm clear, these weren't sort of new Syrian refugee families. These were families who had been on waiting lists for a long time. On
waiting lists for homes in Peterborough.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Sharon, I want to share with you, this was, the guy who's producing this segment, Colin Ellis, was live tweeting from the Toronto Vital Signs luncheon last week, and somebody tweeted this to him when they realized he was there. The tweet said, "Housing is permanent, philanthropy is limited and possibly biased by the donor." That was Neil Vandenberg's view. Any truth to that?
Well, I think if you allow it to be true, you can allow it to be true. I think that my philosophy is you bring donors into a challenge to move things forward more quickly. I think we are in a very unique time in this province where many of our mayors and our premier and our prime minister are actually sitting at tables together, having big, meaty conversations and actually wanting to work together. And so my theory is, where does philanthropy play in affordable housing? It would seem to be a drop in the bucket. But when you hear stories like John's, you realize that they can inspire whole communities to move forward on seemingly intractable problems. So I hear 1,500 on a wait list, and we've got 85,000 on a wait list here in Toronto. And we housed 18% fewer families last year. So how are we going to move that forward? I think John touched on a great example. The community foundations are increasingly using their existing assets. So people don't always know we hold endowment funds. Well, those endowments are invested for good return into the city. Well, one of the things we're starting to do, and Toronto Foundation is doing it as well, is investing in housing. So we made a $1.5 million loan to Habitat for Humanity to get one of their biggest projects off the ground here in Toronto for precisely this reason. If we're not going to step in, who is? And I don't care if they're small amounts of money, if they actually bring to the surface the issues at play and get more philanthropy involved.
This is a bit of an odd question, but given that, Habitat for Humanity is a charity, you're a charitable organization, do you care if they pay you back?
Well, yes, our donors care, but at the end of the day, we should be working together in this community. The community foundations exist to facilitate and foster philanthropy. We're not in competition with anybody, which is what makes it a great union with us and Habitat, or us and any other organization that wants to move issues like poverty and affordable housing forward.
Brian, let me do a little follow-up with you on that tweet that came in and get your sense about whether or not when a corporation gives money, for example, to the Sudbury Community Foundation, whether they think that that donation comes with strings attached that you need to respect. What's the situation there?
I think it sort of starts with educating of the donor, whether it's a corporate donor or an individual or an organization, a service club, that if the case is properly made, in this particular case for affordable housing, So individuals on relatively low incomes, for example, can afford a reasonable quality of life, and as I mentioned before, with a certain level for care. In my experience, whether it's been through the Sudbury Community Foundation or with other organizations that I've been connected to, that the response has been quite good and quite positive. We need to do more of it to explain that this is the situation that individuals, for example, cannot, in the case of seniors, and that's what I'm focusing on, are not necessarily able to maintain themselves in their own home. In some cases, that's not necessarily financial, although sometimes it is financial, but also simply being able to cope with the demands of home ownership in terms of maintenance and things of that nature. So when that case is made, my experience has been rather heartening that there has been an understanding that these are philanthropic dollars well spent.
Well, okay, Lisa, let's talk turkey here. Chrysler still makes cars in Windsor, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So if you are hitting up Chrysler for some money because some neighborhood wants a community center, people are just going to have to make their peace with the fact that if they want to call it the Chrysler Community Center, that's the way it's going to be, right?
Absolutely, and I think it goes back to our donors and our corporations or whoever's giving us the money. They're informed, they're educated, but they're also highly engaged. And so when you talk about impact, that's what they're looking for. And so we try to leave the politics and the other issues aside. And I think back to Sharon's point, we try to bring people together because we're not one issue focused. We can talk about the whole community. And I think that's what makes Community Foundation so exciting, is that we can bring a collective together and look at that collective impact. So we're happy to work with whoever wants to give us donations, but they're really looking at their community because they care about it. And we want to help them to achieve that goal.
What's the biggest donation you've received?
For us, well, we're pretty small, so we've gotten a donation for over $1 million. And then we're helping that donor determine where that money goes, where the best impact is. And it changes all the time because sometimes he's looking at youth and sometimes he's looking at specific areas of our community. So it's exciting for us to be able to share that information from vital signs and other information we receive in the community.
You have not said the person's name yet. Do they want it that way?
Yes, they do.
They want to be anonymous.
They prefer to be anonymous.
They got $1 million to spend. They want it to have impact. They want to be anonymous. Do you go to that person and say, we love your money, but you do know that, well, I don't know. Do you say what the money goes for, or does he say what it goes for?
We work together. So if he identifies an issue area, we will drill that down more, give him a variety of options, and then we can still let people know that the donation is happening and that we have a donor in our community who wants to support it. And this is an opportunity for other people who aren't as involved in legacy giving or endowments to get more involved.
John, what's the biggest check somebody's written you?
Again, over $1 million, and we're just 7 years old, so the total assets that we're managing are $6 million right now, so a considerable portion of that. But I had a gentleman, this might be an interesting example, come to my office doing planning, an only child, never married, so family inheritance now that he wants to make a gift to the community. And really very little idea how he wanted to direct it, which speaks to vital signs and how having that snapshot of the community then helped direct things. And he looked at it for a minute and he said, do we have a breakfast program? Mom, at schools, Mom always insisted that I go to school on a full stomach. And we talked about Food for Kids, which is a program in our school board. And he said, yes, I think a third of the granting each year could go to that. And what about helping young people reach their full potential? Sports, music, higher education. And I said, well, we do have a fund called the Mustache Fund that is designed. And he said, good, a third for that. And then he said, I don't suppose your board would mind some discretion just to direct money where it's most needed. And I'm thinking, well, this is just wonderful, who's briefed you? And it was only as he was walking out the office, he said, I suppose you haven't even asked me how much the estate might be. And I said, well, we haven't received it, and I figured you would tell me when you were comfortable with that. And it's a significant estate, more than $1 million.
So you can expect more where that came from.
So that's the kind of thing that leads people to the Community Foundation typically. It's gratitude for lives well lived, families that have raised their children in the community. Often people, we had another fund that was just change from a fund in waiting to a fund through, sadly, the death of the donor, where he looked at the fact that he had 5 children, divided the estate 6 ways, and so one portion of the estate was to benefit the community where they'd raised their family. So
That's really quite impressive, isn't it?
it's
That is
quite
amazing.
remarkable. And I don't know whether you heard the survey just on the weekend about seniors, and asked the question about funds to benefit their children and leaving an inheritance for your kids. It's actually more and more common for people to say, my kids should be helping me. They're doing just fine things, and we want to do something that will benefit our community.
You've only been there a month, so I'm not sure you've collected a big check yet, have you?
I haven't collected one yet, but I would say after 20 years in philanthropy, do we not have the best job in the whole world? I mean, that is the most beautiful thing. And I think the other thing I want to say, just built on something that Lisa said, is the kind of donor that comes to a community foundation is often quite under the radar. These folks have quite a lot of humility, and really all they care about is that they're having impact.
So they don't need a name on a building.
It's not the same. It's so different, Stephen. This is what attracted me to this job in the first place, is the opportunity to actually work with the kind of donor that wants to work in collaboration, that wants to work to push a mandate forward, to tackle issues as opposed to institutions, and to really change things for their community for the better.
Brian, I haven't asked you yet, down to our last minute here. What's the biggest check you've cashed?
Well, of course, my days are early, so I'll have to go from history. We've had about a half a dozen or so individual donors who have given the Sudbury Community Foundation the range of $500,000 or so. We're a fairly small foundation, and I think I would echo Sharon's experience that these individuals, by and large, they come from a variety of walks of life. They have a strong background in terms of being philanthropic, in terms of supporting other organizations, of supporting United Ways. They are generally quite open to what it is that we as the foundation see as priorities. I believe they are in tune with the mission that what we want to do is make our community, in this case Sudbury, a better place to live, to work, to learn, and to play, to encourage people to stay, to come back if they've left, or to be a newcomer.
If there's one thing I always learn when I speak to, this is I think the second program we've done on community foundations, there's no lack of need. That is for darn sure. So keep on keeping on, you guys. My thanks to Brian Koivu, the Executive Director of the Sudbury Community Foundation, for being there on the line from Laurentian University. Tell them all I'll see him in a couple of weeks for convocation. Lisa Collodi is here. She's the Executive Director of the Windsor-Essex Community Foundation. John Good, the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough. And Sharon Avery, 30 days on the job, as Executive Director of the Toronto Foundation. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.